These are the Lisburne Hills, and you have probably already seen my video about them. So why am I coming back to these Lisburne Hills? Well, it's because my video about them had one major flaw. I completely got wrong the reason why this coast is so straight and why it forms a 90-degree angle like it does. So today will just be a follow-up video where I will actually explain how this straight coast formed. So you might remember from my last video, I mentioned how the Lisburne Hills formed in the Brookian orogeny when the Arctic-Alaska microplate smashed into the North America plate and formed the Lisburne Hills. And this is true, the Arctic-Alaska plate was moving south into the North American plate, and it formed the Lisburne Hills, which are, as I mentioned in my previous video, northeastward verging, which means they have a gentle slope northeast, but a sharp slope facing south. But after this is what I got wrong. So in my video, I talked about the Herald Arch, which I said ran through the middle of these Lisburne Hills and pulled the rocks towards it, which somehow magically made the coast straight. I really did not explain it well. So to correct my previous video, I did actually end up buying the research paper, which is the main source on how this coast formed so straight, and this actually cleared so much up. So here is a map of Cape Lisburne. And as you can see, these black lines with the arrows correspond with the direction of a thrust fault. And so as you can see by this, the Herald Arch actually started north of all of the mountains. And so I'm here on MS Paint and I just want to make a diagram of exactly how this works. So here you have the old mountains, and these are northeastern verging hills from the Brookian orogeny, as I mentioned previously. So all of these hills are gently sloping northeastward, right? But then you have a newer tectonic activity come into the area. You have the Herald Arch, and this goes approximately like that, and it's pushing on them from the north and from the east. And this Herald Arch also created a weakness in the rock. It created a straight thrust fault line. And with nowhere to go from the old northward verging hills, this section of the Lisburne Hills got pushed or became an allochthin, which is essentially a huge area of crust that was thrusted over old rocks, as you can see by this chart. And so these Lisburne Hills were pushed on top of the older ridge and formed the extremely sharp coast that we see there. But that still doesn't explain everything, because why does the coast then make a sharp 90-degree turn once it reaches past this shore? Well, it is just because the area north of the Herald Arch here is another older portion of crust that formed straight and also had a lot of erosion forces acting on it. As you can see today, there is a large sandbar which goes across basically the entire coast, even if there is a body of water. So the northern coast was essentially formed off of older crust and sand deposits from the ocean. And so to recap, we have the old Brookian orogeny, and this orogeny experienced the new Herald Arch forces, which were putting pressures from the north and the west, and this caused the Lisburne Hills to break along a fault line and become an allochthon, or be pushed over old rocks. And that is why we have this straight coast. And the reason we have this 90-degree angle is because the section north of the Herald Arch here, the Herald Arch did not put pressures on, and so this acts as just the old Brookian orogeny, and is super straight mainly because of waves, which has created a long line of sand, as you can see. And so I really hope this video was able to clear things up and truly explain why this coast is so straight.